How are you washing?
No, I have water from the tank. There's no mains.
Oh, sorry. Welcome. We're live. I was hoping Vanessa might say something inappropriate. Hello and good evening and welcome to Broadsheet on the Telly. My name is John Phosphorus Ryan. You're very welcome to Broadsheet readers, commenters, trolls, all the trolls. A big welcome to Neil Curran, our producer, who's live from Dublin after an absence of a week, unexplained. But and also a big hello to Olga Cronin from The Sheet and to celebrity accountant Vanessa Foran.
Hi everyone.
Who's speaking from her house, which is barely a house, it's a shell, it's a studio. She's forced to live in a mobile home. Is that
right? John. What John is not saying is I have builders in at the moment, so the back of my house is a shell. So
right, and that's not a metaphor for anybody out there.
I know they love reading all sorts in, don't they?
Oh yeah, God. Well, we will deal with the Bernie thing later if you want, Vanessa.
And all the others. That's fine. It's entirely up to you, John. Your show. You're the boss.
Well, it's not my show. It's our show. It's our show. No, it's Broadsheet show. Anyway, we have surprise guests coming up. And
have you the doorbell sorted? Has the man
I was just going to do a doorbell check here. So when you hear that sound, okay, everybody just act normal.
So I'll answer the door because I'm the youngest. You know the way the job in the house was. I get that, will you?
Oh, I was the youngest, was it? God. We had a big letterbox where nobody had to ring the bell. They just had to put their arm, if they were told enough, to get through and walk in.
Open the door.
Those big fancy doors, like those double doors, you know, big doors.
It just had a massive letterbox. Because my dad used to get subscriptions for magazines, I think, or something. Books actually, that was it. So it was a big letterbox, and it allowed easy entry, as they say.
So you didn't have the string with the key inside. Does anyone remember those houses where the key for the front door was attached to a string inside the letterbox? And you put your hand in and you pulled out the key and you opened the door.
It's a very good idea.
Latchkey, that's where, isn't that the latchkey kid?
I'm a latchkey kid, of course, yeah. Well, I wasn't a latchkey kid, I was a kind of a letterbox kid. Like,
but you see, you had a nanny, John, didn't you?
Letterbox kid.
John Ryan had a nanny, you see. So
well, they were kind of, not nanny, well, yeah, I guess they were, yeah, but they weren't...
It's all coming out, folks.
I'll tell you exactly who they were.
Like Prince Harry and Prince William.
Exactly like that. They would put the toothpaste on my toothbrush, and before I wake, they would damp my eyes with sponge just to wipe the sleep from my eyes.
Viewers, this explains so much about John Ryan.
None of that is actually true. So Neil Curran was away for the last couple of weeks. Neil, anything you'd like to share?
I can't tell you where I was because I'd have to kill you.
Oh.
I was researching a future show.
Okay, brilliant. Well, because you certainly didn't research this show. But Neil, before we get to sort of serious matters, I thought we'd open with the movies instead.
Oh,
kind of just jumping in.
We're gonna go in high. So are we?
Well, sorry, you know.
We have 2 weeks worth of movies to catch up on as well.
Oh, good. Okay. Why don't we do 3 now and then maybe 3 towards the end of the show?
Oh no, we're not going to do 6 movies. I'll just give you what's out this week. We need to get a grip here. No, I'll tell you what's out this week, and we can talk a little bit.
Oh,
so there's 3 movies out this week, and there's The Incredibles 2 is out this week, which is a favorite amongst adults and children alike. So this is the Pixar movie, directed and written by Brad Bird. And I'm going to be honest and say I haven't seen Incredibles 1. Everyone says it's great, but I'm just not into those type of movies. So I'm sure this one is also great. Vanessa's probably seen it because Vanessa is now the lady who sees everything. Vanessa, have you seen this one?
I know everything, folks. No, I haven't, but I have seen
She's the Queen of Pirate Bay. They call
I
you.
haven't seen it. I wasn't sent to screener. Brian,
You weren't
I wasn't sent to screener. I did see the first one, and it's unusual for there to be such a gap. It's like 15 years between one and number two. And it's great that the same voices are in. I mean, Holly Hunter. I mean, who doesn't want to listen to Holly Hunter again and again and again? And of course, the husband is Coach. Does anyone remember Coach?
Don't
Sorry,
yeah, I do. I actually do.
You're the movie guy.
Yeah, I do remember Coach. He was also in The Devil's Advocate with Al Pacino as well, amongst other things. What was his name? Craig T. Nelson.
And he was the baddie in, one of the movies with the dog is the detective. Oh, he was the baddie in one of those as well.
Oh,
what is your
K9 or something?
With James Belushi.
No, there was two.
No,
there was
the
Turner and Hooch was the one with Tom Hanks.
Turner and Hooch. I think he was the baddie in Turner and Hooch.
Okay. Luke Brennan joins us from Portugal. Hello, Luke.
Hi, John. How are you doing? Good to see you all.
Hey, Lukey.
Hey, Luke.
Luke is getting hairier, but if anything.
Hairier but a day. Yeah. No, they just roll me out and shave me down once every 3 months or so. But other than that, it's just.
You got a decent mic, Luke.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Yeah. So doesn't do the whole thing any harm. To get being able to hear people is important, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I'm slightly jealous of it's sort of streamlined.
Yeah, I was aiming high. I was looking at what you have, John, and I was thinking if I can do that good, I'll be okay.
It looks a bit like a chalk ice.
The hair goes.
Like a chalk ice on a stick as well.
Well, the LD Systems, I don't think are any longer in business, but who are the makers of this mic? So
yeah, well. I actually got this for something else. It's a mic for recording stuff. It comes with a little box, which is sort of like a little amp, or preamp. So it's useful for other stuff. So I thought, well, might as well use that.
Right. Well, Luke Brennan joins us from Portugal. Luke is an entrepreneur who sort of just took taking a couple of years out.
Yeah. I was lucky enough that my second in command in Dublin said to me that she was interested in running the business for 3 years. So I said, does that mean I can go to Portugal for 3 years? And she said yes. So yeah, I'm just trying to I suppose slightly take the foot off the pedal a little bit. You can end up, as I'm sure you know yourself, John, you can get too deep into things, and you can sort of work and then wonder what you're doing. And I was sort of at that sort of point in my life where I was thinking, okay, well, I've done some good things, but I'd like to try some different things. So just got a chance to do some painting recently, and also, I'm learning Portuguese 8 hours a week, so that's improving all the time. Yeah.
And are you able to have chats with Portuguese people?
Yeah. Basic transactional stuff, in restaurants and whatever. But if the mood is right, the chemistry is good between two people, and they're trying to have a conversation, it's actually quite easy, just by waving hands and sort of like when people are actually interested in making sort of conversation, it's quite easy. So it's great fun. And I think learning a language, like they say, it's like after 16, it's quite difficult to learn languages. And I never consider myself to be someone who's good at languages, but I have to say I've really enjoyed. It's very good for the brain. It's very sort of stimulating to be learning languages because you're getting all the culture with it, and it sort of it tickles your brain in a nice way.
You feel smarter when you're speaking in a different language.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's a very nice way to sort of engage, and I'm really like you really do. Portugal isn't so far away from Ireland, but in a way, it's a sort of world away in terms of the situation the Portuguese people are in relative to Ireland. I think their situation is more akin to how it was when we were growing up in Dublin. They're having very seriously difficult times, particularly here in the north of Portugal, in Porto. Just looking there, you know, like someone working as a teacher here earns about 10 grand a year.
Yeah, it's incredible, really, isn't it? What's going on there? Yeah.
And like, I mean, I was looking. I have a friend here who moved here from Switzerland, and like the average wage here is a quarter of what it is in Switzerland. But at the same time, the cost of living here is half what it is of Switzerland. So, you know, that's the difficulty. You know, it's okay to have sort of low wages when there's money around and things cost less. But actually, particularly with globalization, that sort of, you know, the Airbnb type thing, where I mean, a lot of people in Porto feel that like people like, you know, me and well, more the tourists coming over are basically, it's a sort of mass eviction. It's like the clearances in Scotland or something, you know, because like the street that I live on, since I've got here, you know, there's a lot of houses that haven't been touched for 50 years, and half the houses are probably empty. Yeah, but at the same, it's not a particularly sort of good street, but it's interesting in that way. But it has, you know, sort of I'd say every, you know, since I've got here, maybe 4 or 5 others out of maybe 200 houses have been done up. So, you know, that's quite a trend, you know, for houses that haven't been touched. But they're not being done up for Portuguese people. You know, it's going to be either Airbnb. I mean, I was talking to a Portuguese guy, and he was saying that a friend of his bought an apartment, you know, in the centre of town, and you know, he realised that the other 9 apartments in the block were all Airbnb. So there's no community there. Right. So, you know, he just ended up sort of selling out and moving on. So you've got this peculiar situation. So it's like a sort of like a dollhouse community where everyone has been turfed out of the centre of Porto, and you have you know, sort of you know, sort of them either, I mean, usually sort of, I mean, a bit like, you know, Dublin where they've moved everyone out to the west, you know. It's a similar sort of thing that, you know, the high value is bring people in. It's kind of like, it's a bit like living in Disney World or something, you know. And that's a Dublin thing as well, you know. I mean, you're sort of, you know, you're sort of right in the centre of something that people are willing to pay more for than people who authentically actually live there, you know, sort of have value for it. So therefore, you get pushed out.
Yeah, we were actually talking about Disney before you came in, Luke. Neil was going to, we had decided to do the movies before the kind of serious stuff.
Sure.
Particularly because one of our guests let us down. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to mention his name, but we'll call him Derek.
That was me doing light art stuff, John. That's you know, I'm afraid that's how I am.
Yeah.
But
this Derek guy was supposed to come on, you know, was supposed to come on and talk about Brexit and the white paper and all the shenanigans in the House of Parliament. But anyway, I'll keep his identity secret for the moment. Anyway. Sorry, Luke. Neil, should we go through the?
Yeah, so we have a couple other things out as well. I know Vanessa's dying for me to mention one of them. But there is a Paul Schrader of Taxi Driver fame, amongst other things, has a movie out this week called First Reformed, starring Amanda Seyfried and Ethan Hawke. Now, I haven't seen it, but it looks pretty dark. So Ethan Hawke plays a priest, and he's got a dark past, or there's some kind of dark past alluded to. And there's an anniversary coming up in the parish, and history starts to come back to haunt them. It's getting pretty good reviews. I haven't seen it yet, but the trailers are pretty dark, and it's getting pretty good reviews. And that's Schrader. That's Paul Schrader. I mean, the guy.
There's an actor in that as well.
There's what?
There's an Irish actor in that as well, like a Brosnan or something like that. No.
Let me see. I don't. Not that I know of, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Paul Schrader wrote Taxi Driver. He also directed a really good movie called Autofocus. Do you remember that name?
Which one, John?
It's called Autofocus. It was a very, very strange movie about a guy who was the star of Hogan's Heroes, American comedy, and he became like a sex addict. And the first video cameras, the first VHS video cameras, he bought them, and he destroyed his life through this obsession with filming himself and sex, basically. And, but brilliant.
It happens.
Yeah, no, it was like Taxi Driver with, I don't know, video cameras and things. You know, it was an odd movie, but brilliant, very memorable. Sorry, Neil.
Yeah, he's had that kind of career. Like he wrote The Last Temptation of Christ, obviously Taxi Driver. He did the screenplay for Raging Bull. He did Mosquito Coast.
Ooh.
Like he's got quite the credentials behind him. And you know he can do gritty and dark when he wants. So.
Look at the actors that have said his words. From River Phoenix, Harrison Ford, Helen Mirren, Robert De Niro. Jesus Christ, that's an incredible career.
I played the sex addict.
Who was that?
Gary. I'm not too sure.
Gary Busey or?
He's about as good as it gets. He was the gay guy and as good as it gets.
Oh,
Nicholson.
Oh God, I know who you're talking about. It's not Gary anyway.
This is not helping Neil.
Sorry, Neil.
Some movies, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, that's that one. The other film, or the big film, the one Vanessa has been passing me 20s to name as the film of the week, is of course Dwayne Johnson in Skyscraper. It's like they've taken the Die Hard film.
I deliberately wore a loose top this evening.
She used to bring a towel to the cinema with her and just go and see it.
It's Greg Kinnear, is that actor's name?
Yeah, that's it. Brilliant.
Greg Kinnear.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Hello to the mosh pit, and also hello to Catherine, who's in Vincent's this evening. And I big hello, and I hope you get better soon. And thinking of you, and everybody here is thinking of you. Thank you. Sorry.
Something interesting from the chat, but it says there's a hi. Oh, this is from Butterfly Lane. Ryaner, is that your nickname, John? Ryaner.
It's my nickname. Yeah, I mean anybody called Ryan in Ireland was Ryner. They were very creative.
In Cork, you'd be Rhino.
Right. Okay. You see, you know, it's very.
So you're Ryaner. Ryanair. You're just missing a consonant or a vowel from.
Vanessa, this doesn't happen to Barry Norman. Can we please go back to?
So yeah, I guess we should get Vanessa to talk endlessly about Dwayne Johnson and Skyscraper and why the critics are wrong in saying that it's not great. I don't know, Vanessa. Have you seen anything about it? Have you controlled yourself watching trailers?
Listen, this has been going on for over a year, folks. The critics are looking at these and they're looking at scripts, they're looking at performances, and they're looking to see if there's gaps in the CGI and stuff like that. Why can't just people go and want to go and have 2 hours filled up with just
text,
just complete cheesecake? I don't understand the need to be completely fulfilled. Cheesecake
and beefcake. Exactly. I mean,
that'll do me. That'll do me. You know, I mean,
these avant-garde.
This type of movie is total fantasy in its own way, and it's extreme, and nobody is ever going to be in that environment in real life.
I think it's based on a true story, Vanessa.
Oh, it is. I to a certain point. But I mean, if you look at The Rock in, say, San Andreas, I mean, nobody survives any of that. There's one part in it that I just know nobody would survive. But they all live and they go into another adventure and another adventure and stuff. It's just cheesecake, folks. I mean, critics want to go and look at, you know, the script was crap and there was and then you have the anoraks on about with all the continuity errors and stuff. Just go and eat your tub of ice cream and your Star bars and
cry into your pillow. Yeah, you're right.
Movie boffins. What do they know?
What do they know, indeed? What do they know, indeed?
Well, but you're like, the guy isn't pretending he's, you know, Jack Nicholson.
No, he's not even pretending to be Arnie.
He is better than Arnie, though.
He does. He wears a suit. He wears a suit in the film, and I'm pretty sure he takes his top off at some stage. So he ticks a lot of boxes on the blockbuster.
He does, and in the TV show Ballers is for me. I really enjoyed watching Ballers, for not just for him in a suit and the fact that he plays a financial consultant. But
So, did you reckon he's like a sort of celebrity accountant type figure?
well, I suppose he's more in Ballers. He's more of like a finance manager.
Okay. There or thereabouts.
Neil,
Our client profile is quite similar, actually.
Neil, do
Yeah.
you want to? There must be another movie, is there? Or,
There,
2 weeks.
there is. There is one more movie. There's a film called The Secret of Marrowbone, directed and written by Sergio G. Sanchez. Now, you're all familiar with Sergio, I presume.
Yeah,
Well, he actually he actually wrote a film called, or he wrote the screenplay for a film called The Orphanage, which was excellent. Back, gosh, it's well over 10 years now. It's a horror film. So the people behind this film would have worked with Guillermo del Toro and some of his movies in the past. So again, this is it's a period piece. Family get together, and then scary things start to happen, or mysterious and scary things start to happen. Again, I haven't seen it, and the reviews are kind of they're better than Skyscraper. Sorry,
Are you not going to come to the screenings that you've been invited to? No,
just so many movies, John. You just can't see them all, and you know.
I've not seen any of them. I mean, have you seen? Have you seen?
We didn't get any invites to these ones. We didn't get any invites to these ones.
You know, you can illegally. I mean, you can download it some way apparently on the internet.
Oh no, I wouldn't be.
We wouldn't
into
do
kind of
that.
thing.
I'm an officer of the court, so I couldn't possibly do that.
Okay, so that's it, Neil. That's the movie. It's 2 weeks, fortnight in summer, and that's it.
That's it for now. But I do have movie news though. That
please.
maybe. So people might be aware that there's a sequel to Halloween that's coming out this Halloween, which is going to forget about the 20 million sequels to the original Halloween, and this one's going to be a direct sequel to the
Jamie Lee Curtis.
to the original. Jamie Lee Curtis is in it, so it's going to forget everything that happened in the other sequels and go back to what happened straight after the first film. Well, keeping that in mind, there's a sequel to RoboCop being shot at the moment, or being made at the moment, directed by Neil Blomkamp, who is the guy who was behind District 9, Chappie, and Elysium. And taking a similar vein to Halloween, they're going to forget the two sequels, the TV show and the cartoon, and just do a direct sequel to the original film. I'm not really sure where they're going to go with that, because I think all the sequels and the reboot that came out a couple of years ago kind of missed the point of what Verhoeven was doing in the original RoboCop.
Can I just give you a little RoboCop story there? Like, do you know that like the old guy in the original film, Dana Hurley? He's Irish, right? Yeah. He was a friend of my dad's, and I remember about a year before RoboCop came out, this fella came out to the house, and you know, there was, I mean, obviously we were told he was sort of a big deal, whatever, but he was pushing us in a swing, and we're thinking, oh, this guy, and he's but he used to be on a Hawaii 5-0 and stuff like that as well. He was from in around Dunleary, but he was actually nominated for an Oscar at one point.
That's right.
Robinson Crusoe. He did the title role in the Robinson Crusoe film in the 50s, I think. But interesting sort of local connection.
Did loads of voiceovers and things, like you see documentaries in the 50s and the movies, you know, the movies made, and he'd be.
He was actually quite
in the Rat Pack.
Yeah, he was actually quite a principled fellow. You know, he sort of there was problems with the studios, and they were, you know, the actors were being bullied, and you know, he was one of the people that, you know, sort of got into trouble for standing up for his you know, the actors' rights and whatever. But a very interesting fellow.
Brilliant. Neil, you missed last week. We were discussing the Michael Flatley movie.
Good.
Will I put it back up, folks?
Burns my eyes.
There's a little story to go behind it now. We got an email from the producer.
Will I put it up here? So.
Oh yeah, sure. If you like, yeah.
Backdrop.
Well, the producer, we in our post we had said that the star of the movie was Rachel Warren, or the female lead was Rachel Warren, but it's in fact another woman rather, Nicola something, from the Something family. I'll just get his email.
There's a few girls in that movie, I think.
Yeah, but the lady with the hat, or the woman with the hat in the poster, is not Rachel Warren, or no, it's Nicole
Evans.
Nicole Evans. Well, the producer, absolutely, his name is Jed Tune.
Is it Tune or CHOON?
Tune, one more tune, and he wrote to us and said that it was actually somebody who wrote who sent, the person who sent it to us. I then sent him Jed's email and said, that isn't Rachel Warren, you know. And he went, maybe your man should have a word at IMDb, because when you look at IMDb, Nicole whatever is way down the back, and Rachel Warren is up as the lead actress. So I wrote back sort of saying, look, I'm really, sorry about that, we've changed it, but you might want to have a word at IMDb. Jed gets really offended with this. It's like, he writes an email back saying, really, don't you know, this is not, IMDb is not based on what the actress is in the movie. It's based on their previous, get it right. How dare you not understand what's going on? And it's because of you people. Like, okay, Jed, steady on here. So
okay, I have IMDb here in front of me now, and it credits Rachel Warren.
Yeah, Rachel
Nicole
Warren.
Evans, Lara Lemon. There's a great name, Lara Lemon.
Yeah.
Lauren Harris.
Yeah.
I'm just going through the ladies. There's a Mary Louise Kelly.
But the only person that really of any note,
Claire Mullen.
Notable right now, Vanessa, is Rachel and Nicole. Anyway, is this interesting? Sorry.
But on the poster,
It's a conspiracy, John.
Well,
the poster has Nicole's name on it.
Yes, that's it. That's what confused us really. So anyway, I apologize. But Jed Tune. I was then kind of sneakily going to ask, can we get a
red carpet gig?
Private screening. But I haven't yet, so I'll get back to him anyway.
But Michael Flatley probably has a screening room in his mansions, one of his mansions. Wouldn't it be great if it was somewhere, like Bermuda or somewhere like that? He brought us out on his private jet. We could get our hair done. We could have Marco on the plane with us.
Also, Marco was a no-show a couple of weeks ago as well. Anyway, we'll talk about Marco in a second. But Neil,
that's not fair. It wasn't a no-show. There was apologies in advance.
Oh yeah, no, but I thought he was going to anyway. Okay, and Neil, he was going to come back. He will come back, won't he?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Sorry, Neil.
And there's one other movie thing to drop, and we've spoken before about the superhero universes and how it's done to death, and Marvel does really well and DC doesn't. Well, from the world of DC, they're shooting a Joker film, and if you remember, everyone loved Heath Ledger, everyone loved Jack Nicholson, and then the Jared Leto Joker from the more recent Batman or Suicide Squad movies. The jury was out on it, so they're going to tell his backstory, except they're not using Jared Leto in it. They're cast Joaquin Phoenix. So he's going to be playing the Joker, and that's going to start filming in September. So that could be an interesting one to watch. Now, the Joker origin story is actually based on a comic book called The Killing Joke, for anyone who cares.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. There's an animated version of it as well. So whether they stick to that, I don't know, but there was an era, the Frank Miller era of Batman, that when he did The Dark Knight, that kind of, we moved out of seeing Batman as this kind of camp storyline, camp superhero, and it became this very, very dark, to create this very dark narrative that kind of stuck since then, and The Killing Joke very much is in that vein. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there.
Does anybody remember it was Romero, the Joker in the original Batman series? He camped it up anyway. No, nobody remember that.
Say that again, John.
The guy was called Romero. He was the original Joker in the original Batman, the TV series with Bruce. It was
Cesar Romero.
Cesar Romero. Yeah. Sorry. Anyway, he was the.
And of course, the guy who played the Penguin in the original TV series went on to become Rocky's trainer in Rocky.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Burgess Meredith. Yeah.
And can anybody name Catwoman from the TV series?
Julie Newmar.
And who replaced her?
Oh, here, what's this? This is like the leaving cert.
This table quiz.
And if you answer in Irish, you get 2% more. Them's the rules. So,
Gasland.
we're done with the movies. There's no more movies.
So that's that.
I'm going to pull out a question now for John on Batman. Who played King Tut for 10 episodes?
In Batman?
Yeah.
I don't know.
A guy called Victor Buono.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
Here, who played the Egghead?
You're just looking at the IMDb.
Oh, you're just looking at it. Oh, no. Sorry, these aren't coming from the mosh pit then.
Well, no. Who played the Egghead, John?
John Lennon.
No, and Olga. Who played Olga?
In Batman. There was an Olga in Batman.
Yeah.
No, but that's saying just reading IMDb. This isn't.
That's what it's there for, John.
No, it's not. No.
I'll give you.
She was also in All About Eve. Her name is Anne Baxter, anyway.
Oh yeah, Anne Baxter, of course. Yeah. No,
of course. Oh yes, I know.
Here's a random Batman TV series fact for you. In most episodes, Batman would pull up in the Batmobile outside the commissioner's office, and him and Robin would jump out and run into. That was the same shot they used in every episode. They just filmed it once, and they used it in every single episode. They never did any other reshoots or any other angles. So all the extras are the same extras every time they do that.
Can I bring you news from the chat pit, or the mosh pit as John calls it? The mental image of Neil and the towel in the cinema has upset quite a few.
Yeah.
And
what kind of image did they think it is? Would it really?
Well, you said bring a towel, so I mean, naturally people.
Because it's so hot in there, you bring a towel to cool yourself off.
Well, there you go, viewers. And JDF Reality, who's a great supporter of Broadsheet on the TV in the chat pit, it said Killing Joke is one of the best ever DC animated films. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but John is probably the expert on it.
No. Well, Killing Joke were a kind of a post-punk band in the early 80s of the second punk wave in Britain. Anyway, there you go. Very fascinating.
The Oracle.
So before our guest arrived, we have a surprise guest coming up. On the site this week, the Disclosures Tribunal has been revisited in the sense of the module with the press in terms of Morrison, Cape and Ortiz, Morrison, Cape and the Irish Times, and I know that
Irish Times Part 2.
Irish Times Part 2, and there'll be Morris on the INN and Morris on Sunday Times and Morris on
The Sun, Mail.
And Star. And they're very, very lengthy pieces. But,
they are, and I think a lot of people find them extremely frustrating because they probably would like a much shorter snippet. But it's just one of those things that just if you want to know, it just have to read it. Not read the transcripts even, but it just there was a lot there, and it's worth them.
Yeah, well, like this week, it kind of crystallized it for me. I mean, in terms of understanding, getting a kind of almost a 3D effect. I could see, I can understand now kind of what happened. It's a bit like the thing with Dennis. There's only like a sense of what was going on, and then I got,
yeah, because if you think about it, the way that it, and I don't want to go on down a big road of talking about it if people don't want to hear it, but like the way that the tribunal did its modules, it wasn't chronological. So there was a lot of confusion going on. I think even people just normal Joe Soaps following it in the papers might have been like, hang on, at what stage was this? And I think that the evidence in the most recent module puts things in other modules in a different light because of that.
Olga, just for a second, we'll go back to the tribunal, but Olga is going to a summer school this weekend.
Oh, John. No, it's not this weekend. It's next Saturday.
Saturday week, Olga is appearing at the Daniel Carroll inaugural summer school. Daniel Carroll was a young mother of two sons who died while in emergency accommodation in 2017. But Olga, it was launched in response to the McGill Sausage Fest, and Olga's doing it as is Gemma Doherty, Lydia Hayden.
Anne-Marie McNally is doing it.
McNally,
Gemma Doherty.
And it's Geezer has started organised it.
Nicole.
Take a good bloke. Nicole has organised it, and the venue. It's in.
It's in. Let me just to get it right. Sorry now.
Get the address and we'll put it in the link. I gather tickets might have been sold out though.
Yeah, it's in the F2. Yeah, the F2 Centre in Fatima, Dublin 3. Sorry,
Dublin 8.
F2 Centre. Yeah, sorry, Dublin 8.
Just down there.
Yeah, sorry. And so Kitty Holland, Senator Lynn Ruan, Linda Hayden, Rose Toll, Tara Deasy, Louise Capilla. She's the editor of the Dublin Inquirer, and Claire O'Connor. Sorry, I don't know everyone's details,
so you get to wear one of those kind of mics and walk around.
So nervous.
Yeah. Sit on a bale of hay and.
No, do the kind of.
You know, like at the web so much, weren't they sitting on bales of hay?
Yeah, but they sit on bales of hay so much. All right. Yeah,
you're coming into Dolphin's Barn then, Olga?
Yep. Not a bother.
So, what are you going to talk about?
I don't know. It's about women in media. So, I'm not too sure. So I think there'll be a panel. I think Gemma O'Doherty is giving a speech for the afternoon section anyway. So,
okay.
Hi,
there's Connor.
Hello.
Hi, Connor. How's it going? How are you?
Ring the doorbell, Connor.
Hey, how's it going?
Could you ring the doorbell? Oh, who's that? Oh, hello. We weren't expecting anybody. Please, everybody, could we just act? No. Hello, Connor.
Hi, how's it going?
It's Conor O'Neill. Hello, Connor. I'm John, and please say hello to Luke, Neil, Olga, and Vanessa. Conor O'Neill is working with Francis Black on the bill that just passed through the Seanad to boycott goods made in areas that are settlement areas, illegally settled areas. I mean, be it in the West Bank or be it in Western Sahara. Is that right?
That's it, exactly. That's the point, yeah.
Okay. So it's been quite a week.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. Really, really amazing couple of days in Leinster House. I have to say, it's not my experience in there normally is crushing defeat after crushing defeat when you're with a small, very, very small group of independents. There's only 6 of them. So it was very nice to be on the winning side for a change. We were walking in this morning actually, and we got a photo sent to us of the Irish flag flying over the city halls in Ramallah and Bethlehem in Palestine. There was two amazing Palestinian farmers actually, Fayez and Mona. They flew over to Ireland on Tuesday to kind of be here to meet with people, and they wanted to be here before the debate. And they were both they were sitting in the gallery when the Seanad voted yesterday, and they were in floods of tears. It was, really, really emotional. A brilliant feud. It's normally very serious and formal in there, but this felt like one of the days when there was a bit of joy about the place, so it was great.
Wow, and it's been quite an interesting week, and then you had Dave Norris was at that, and then he was off to meet Harry, and it was quite a
yeah. In fairness, David Norris, he deserves a special shout out, because we had spent about the bones of a year working on the bill. And when you're doing that, you're kind of forced to start thinking very cynically, So you react to everything like this is good for the bill or this is bad for the bill, and you're being very instrumental about stuff. But we were sat in the office yesterday watching the debate and listening to everybody in that kind of a mindset. But then he got up, and it was proper, like put the pen down, really moving, like he was in tears talking about a former partner of his that he lived with in Tel Aviv for many years, and. I think the RTE Politics social media accounts shared his speech in particular, and he was really.
I think that's the Israeli embassy.
Yeah.
Is there somebody knocking at the door? Did you want to open it? Was there somebody knocking at your door there?
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Whose door is that?
It's definitely
Is it
not
your door,
me.
Connor? No.
No, it's not me.
But my mic was off, so it wasn't here. So
It's definitely not me either. It smells strange.
I feel like I'm in some sort of Ashton Kutcher sketch or something. It's some sort of joke I'm not getting here. Something's going to happen.
That sounds bizarre. Did you hear the knocking there a second?
yeah.
I just heard the second one there as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Sorry, Connor. Continue.
But yeah, it was good. I mean, I guess just to say really briefly about the bill, it's been really good to see all the coverage, because like we there was a load of people involved, a lot of brilliant Irish organisations, Trócaire, Christian Aid, Sadaka, kind of all came together well over a year, and there was a feeling that, you know, there's been lots of stuff in the Irish Parliament over decades that has generally been seen as very sympathetic to what has been happening in Palestine and the Palestinian cause. But you know, you can make a speech or give a motion, and it kind of happens and then it goes away, but there's no kind of tangible, concrete change. But the thing about the bill was that it was seen as something like kind of significant and actually something concrete that people could get behind. And I think that's why people were so happy about it. But it is also important to say, like, all the debate and all the focus was all about Palestine. And that is because it's probably the most high profile example of an occupation in the world. And it's so extensively covered, and the amount of research on it is like unparalleled. But like, as you said yourself at the start, like, the bill is drafted generally. So neither Israel or...
Connor, is there something, I think somebody banging on your door.
I mean, unless this really is an unbelievable timing, and you've actually made this happen.
Do you have birds? Do you have birds there?
No, there's no one here. I'm telling you, it's totally quiet.
Okay, which house?
There's a pair of Mossad agents outside your door, Connor.
That's the thing. Yeah, it's going to happen eventually.
They're jarring they're blocking the signal.
Most odd. No, where's that
That
from?
is it yours?
It's not mine.
Well, can you hear that, Connor?
I can hear it through the microphone on my laptop, but not in my house.
Most unusual.
It's probably just someone tapping the line.
Can we invent a conspiracy quick there?
Yeah.
Funny. Sorry, Connor, continue.
Who's there?
What is that? That's so
John, you're supposed to say banana.
There was a horror movie made about this thing happening, and people started dying. Their screens going black. I'm just putting that out there.
Stop. Come on, lads. Who's doing that?
Don't be looking at me. I'm putting my microphone on mute now.
That's most odd. Sorry,
Yeah.
Okay, Connor, please.
So yeah, the one of the important things in the purpose of the bill is that it's drafted generally. So it can apply to any occupation anywhere in the world if the kind of evidence is there and the Oireachtas agrees. So it's not like the reason that kind of Israel and Palestine and the occupation of the West Bank is covered. Don't know.
Surreal.
But yeah, the reason that particular territory is covered is kind of precisely because of the like overwhelming kind of legal consensus internationally that it's illegal, that the settlement project is their war crimes. But like the same could be said for Western Sahara, for Nagorno-Karabakh, for Northern Cyprus, for lots of kind of territorial disputes around the world. So the bill is general; it can apply anywhere. And if you have the evidence there, or if the Oireachtas agrees, it could apply to lots of other places. But like the principle of this is the same. Like in its essence, it's saying that if we know that certain goods or resources have been mined or extracted as a result of a war crime, then we're not going to be involved in it. But all the attention, of course, is on the West Bank because that's what everybody knows about, and that's there's a big historical connection there.
Yeah. And the bill has been supported by Fianna Fáil and will be supported when it goes into the...
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of the amazing thing. It's a real unusual, like obviously at the moment we have a minority government. I think it's one of the first times, if not the first time, that's happened. So it means that if we try and do something, whatever the initiative may be, you're in this unusual position where even if the government says no and they disagree with you, if you can manage to convince every opposition party of the merit of something, it could actually happen. The same happened. The last bill we sponsored was to do with family unification rights for refugees, and it was the same thing, that it was opposed by the government, but everybody else lined up on the other side of the house and got behind it. And I suppose part of the challenge there is to try and find initiatives that are big enough and radical enough to be meaningful, but not so far enough that you can still get everybody to sign on to it. So we kind of go as far as you possibly can, but that would still get that whole big block of people behind it. So the Sinn Féin, Labour, the Green Party, the Social Democrats, People for Profit, all of that, they were all on board from day one. And then Fine Gael as the government were saying no, and then kind of smack bang in the middle were Fianna Fáil, and they were kind of hedging their bets. Some were kind of supportive, some weren't for a long time. But then I think genuinely we saw this just huge public campaign, people organizing meetings and like protests and marches all over the country for about 5 or 6 months. And then they actually sent, in fairness to them, they sent their foreign affairs spokesperson, Niall Collins, and Billy Kelleher from Cork. They actually sent the two, like there was so much interest in the bill and it was coming up and they still hadn't made a decision, that they paid the money, put them on a plane and sent them out to both Israel and Palestine. They met with a huge number of human rights organizations there. They met with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for both of the two countries. And then they came back and kind of made the final call on it. But it was really it was definitely that the public interest did it. There was one Fianna Fáil TD was kind of joking in the hallway yesterday because the bill had passed, and he was like, you know, thankfully my fucking phone will stop ringing now, kind of just joking. But he said that for the last 4 or 5 weeks, every single Sunday, he'd be at his local golf course and people would be walking up saying, here, come here, I want to talk to you about this Palestine bill. People he'd never talked to in his life. And like I think personally, you can't manufacture that. Like you can do a load of work and you can try and arrange the meetings and get people activated, but if it's not there, it's not there. So, but I think the fact that so many people were like, just ordinary people might have done it for the first time ever, picked up the phone, rang their TV and said, or their TD and said, I'm interested in this, please back it. And I think that's why they did it.
Do you think Fianna Fáil, I mean, Sinn Féin, that Sinn Féin, excuse the term, but that Sinn Féin territory, isn't it really the Palestinian cause?
Yeah, I think like historically, when people would think of that as an issue, they would associate it maybe with Sinn Féin. Part of the challenge, I think, from the start here was to show that the bill wasn't about any one party, that it was, in my view, a relatively modest proposal. And I think as the bill was produced and when we published it in December, well, January, so 6 months ago, slowly, one by one, like the likes of Labour, Ivana Bacik, who herself is a lawyer, she was very, very strongly in favour of it. Catherine Murphy and Roisin Shortall from the Social Democrats were. The Green Party, you started to see all these other voices that wouldn't have historically been associated with this particular cause. And I think that spoke to the fact that the bill wasn't some kind of empty or just some extreme protest initiative. It was actually something that was meaningful and was a reasonable proposal. And I think that helped maybe get the likes of Fianna Fáil on board, that they saw the whole of their parliament.
The fact that it didn't mention Israel did help in the sense that it wasn't seen as a kind of stick to.
Yeah, but because like it really isn't about them. Like, the whole central legal application of the bill hangs around a specific international obligation that states have under humanitarian law. It's the 4th Geneva Convention, and if you violate the 4th Geneva Convention, it's a war crime. The whole purpose of the bill is essentially we want to give effect to that, and it doesn't matter who is committing the crime. It could be Morocco and Western Sahara or anywhere else. But this is it's the flagship case. It's the clearest, most well documented example of it, and I think it just resonates with people.
We had a post on the site about 2 weeks ago arguing that we shouldn't be doing business with them anyway, according to international law. You know what I mean?
I think personally, I don't.
That there was existing, you know.
I think like the thing about like when you reference international law is that, and I think any good and honest lawyer will tell you, is that it is very, very subjective. Like even like the government say they have They have an opinion of the Attorney General that's advising them against this. But again, that's someone's opinion. And it can be well-resourced, it can be well thought out, it can be very considered and coherent, but still people will interpret the same legal obligations differently. So that there probably are scholars who will say that the nature of what's happening there would give us a much stronger obligation. I personally haven't ever seen a really convincing argument of that. Like, again, it's important to say that the bill makes a really clear distinction between goods from the state of Israel and from the settlements, because there is probably a legal argument to be had about one state's obligation to a third party if they are committing some sort of criminal action. But the kind of totally unambiguous illegality of the settlements were what gave the bill the legs to go forward, which is why it's focused on that. You don't want to get into any muddy waters. And I mean, even the Taoiseach, in fairness to him, he opposed the bill, but he went in and spoke as strongly and as clearly with no hedging that the settlement project is totally illegal, and that was kind of what the bill focused on.
But really, what Fine Gael are waiting for is international. They don't want to go it alone.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be quick to criticize Simon Coveney. I think, like, spoke with him at length about this. He is really passionate. He's been out there 3 or 4 times, I think, since he stuck up the post. You could see in his speech as well, it was very impressive. He really does care. Yeah. But I think that the perspective they're taking is that they don't want to be the one that, what he said, he didn't want to be a principled voice in the wilderness. I think that's a direct quote from his speech yesterday. And he saw this as something that would kind of isolate us, and we would be out on our own. And in terms of
trying to get a UN Security Council seat and stuff like that, or genuinely like just.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a strategic difference. I think he would prefer, like, he is going there. He's flying to the region. He's flying to the United States. He is meeting with all these people and trying the diplomatic route. I think what almost everybody in the chamber yesterday said, and what a lot of the commentary has said, is that that's fine, but that's essentially what's been done for at least since Oslo for 25 years. And while the European Union as a bloc has been extremely critical, like the EU's policy has essentially been criticize Israel for illegality and then give aid to Palestine. And it's done that for about 25 years. But while it's been doing that, every single month, step by step, the settlement project is expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding. And there was we actually, when we were doing the research for the bill, we found an amazing article written in 2013, and the title was like, "Time is running out for the two-state solution," and it was signed by John Bruton. And it was this kind of, I've been there, I've done it, I've tried it, and it was this real tell-all, like, if we keep it the way it is, if we just maintain the status quo, it's going to get to that point where there will be no Palestine left to recognize. And I think a lot of Ivana Bacik made the point yesterday herself that the kind of new US administration, and that they're pushing so far to the right, they moved the embassy to Jerusalem, that unless the European Union, probably led by a number of states who will be the first to do it, kind of stand up against that, it's like it will only go one way. So I appreciate the Taoiseach for his sincerity, but I think that there was a big sense of consensus in the chamber that somebody has to be willing to kind of take a step out of the line of the status quo, because for 20 or 30 years it hasn't worked.
Didn't Frances Black make the point, I didn't see all of her speech, but I saw some of it, but didn't she make the point that she talked about articles that she'd seen from the 1980s in regards to the apartheid and the Dunn stores, and it was the very same thing, right? That they were politicians, Irish politicians, they just didn't want to go against the EEC at the time.
They are amazing. I would really recommend like having a look through them. There is this big tranche of kind of state cables, and I don't know whether the journalists got them under an FOI or whether there's some
30-year rule maybe.
Yeah, something like this. But the Sean McCarthy, I think it was, in the Irish Examiner, did a load of stories publishing all these documents, and it's direct quotes. And we were poring over them while we were kind of researching for the bill and the speech, and it was carbon copy. It was senior officials in the Department of Foreign Affairs, and a minister saying that if we did it. So at this point it was in the 80s, the Duns workers were on strike. The whole country was kind of rallying behind them. Some members of the government were thinking, we should do this, let's back it. And then the Attorney General wrote a legal opinion saying we're not able to do it. It is off the table. It's not an option, which a position that was, of course, later reversed. And then you have these cables that the senior officials in the Department of Foreign Affairs and a number of ministers basically said that we'd break the rules of the European Union, then the EEC, and that we would totally isolate ourselves and damage our international reputation. And I mean, it's easy with hindsight. I can understand the logic to the argument, and there is a cautiousness there. And maybe if you are in diplomacy, caution is something that is valuable. But in hindsight, like, we didn't isolate ourselves. That move is one of the things the country is like feted for more than anything we've ever done. And I thought it was funny, the legal stuff, because again, it was the exact same situation. The Attorney General wrote an opinion saying we can't do it. But the politicians at the time kind of...
That was Sutherland.
It was Peter Sutherland, and he left the position, and he went to work for the European Commission, and then he was replaced, I think it was, what's his name, Reynolds, and then the new Attorney General came in, and basically enough of the cabinet said, look, we really want to do this. Can you find a legal avenue for us to do this that would be legally sound? And the justification that he wrote, there's lots of elements to it, but it swung around this idea that some South African produce, they were able to show with research done on the ground that it was produced as a result of slave labor. And the Attorney General basically said, okay, we have these commitments as an EU country or an EEC country to free trade and so on, but we also have these commitments under international law to like not be supporting slave labor. And then they went, brilliant. And the cabinet ran with that and everything was fine. Yeah. The legal opinion that we have, that was the basis of this bill, was written by a man called James Crawford. He's a professor of international law in Cambridge, and he's a sitting ICJ judge. So again, it's not some guy we found down the pub. And he's not an activist judge or anything. He's a really, really well-respected guy. Makes us the same kind of fundamental case here. Yes, we have trade obligations as an EU state, but we also have really, really important humanitarian obligations to not be like facilitating or profiting from or trading in the proceeds of war crimes. His view is that the latter kind of supersedes the former.
Okay, just a couple of very quick questions. I'm sure they're done in the mosh pit as well. So you're a small businessman in Gaza, you're trying to make a living, blah, 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 and you're exporting to Ireland. What happens?
Yeah. Well, so just to say, so Gaza. Sorry. On the other side, so for the West Bank, for example. So what will happen is that the definition, all of the definitional aspects of the bill as well, were lifted from these treaties. So from the Geneva Conventions. So what would happen is that think of two contrasting situations in the West Bank. One would be the two farmers who were here this week, Fayez and Mona. They have a very small tranche of land. They farm it themselves, olives and things like that. The farm actually that they own it's actually like literally, this isn't just being symbolic. It's literally in the shadow of the wall that Israel constructed, and that cut about 50% of their farm away, so that they live in the literal shadow of the wall and they farm it. So that of course wouldn't be affected whatsoever. What would be affected is on the other side of that wall, which again is in the territory has been occupied, is a huge commercial kind of petrochemical farm. I think it's not agricultural; it's some sort of chemical produce. There's a huge white powdery residue over the hills now because of it. That wouldn't be allowed to be imported here. Okay. We have some really great statements. We got statements over the last few months from different Palestinian trade unions.
Just on that, Conor, I mean, what do we say to the entrepreneur in the West Bank who wants to import stuff to Ireland?
When you mean an entrepreneur, do you mean a Palestinian in the West Bank or a settler?
Well, it's the same argument that in the 80s with South African apartheid. You know, aren't you putting out small indigenous businessmen out of business because of this ban?
No, because that's the difference. So I suppose that's one of the areas where the parallels with South Africa kind of branches out a little bit, because here those farmers, Mona and Fayez, they can still sell and import their olives to Ireland if they want, because that's not a settlement good. A settlement good is something that's been produced by a settler who is on that territory illegal. So like a that commercial factory, for example, would no longer be able to export itself to Ireland, whereas the Palestinian farmer, they'd be unaffected.
Okay, and when those people lose their jobs, this is I'm only telling you what is thrown at. Certainly when the anti-apartheid campaign, that was the big thing leveled at them by everybody from Dick Cheney down. You know, that you were destroying, you know, their hopes as well.
I mean, I think, like, if you look at the kind of nature of the settlement project, there's a lot of it is residential settlements. So that is, again, you would have this territory that's been occupied, and then the Israeli government would have built or sanctioned or facilitated in some way these huge, big, really, really well-equipped estates, and they're mainly full of just people who live there. And they're referred to by the Israeli politicians and the Israeli press as facts on the ground. So it's just a waiting game. The longer those people are there, the more people who grow up there, the harder it becomes to say that actually this territory isn't yours. You can't just build on it. But then the commercial settlements, which is what this is mainly focused on, they tend to be larger, bigger companies. So a number of them have actually already pulled out. There's a company called SodaStream. I think Scarlett Johansson did a big marketing campaign for them once, and they got a huge amount of criticism because you'd have all these human rights campaigners and Amnesty International saying, you know, SodaStream is an international company. They operate all over the world, but they're building a factory on stolen land and using stolen resources. And they actually just said, look, we don't want the fucking hassle anymore. So they closed the factory and moved into Israel. So the company didn't really suffer. Like they don't really need to be running their company on an occupied territory. And a lot of the workers, a lot of Palestinian workers at the time, you were saying, well, do you want this factory to go? And on that point, we have so much testimony and statements from Palestinians, from Palestinian trade unions, big trade unions, saying that they ultimately don't want to be a captive workforce. You know, they want, okay, so if a settlement company leaves and they take jobs with them, they want to be able to farm and use those resources themselves. They want to be able to grow their own economy. So there definitely is an element of, if companies are leaving, that is like problematic in the short term. And that would have been something we would have considered for a very, very long time. But I always think in those situations, ask the people involved. And if you look at the response of Palestinians, you look at the statements of Palestinian trade unions representing workers, they don't want to be a captive workforce. There was one, just to say quickly, there was one farmer who sent a letter and he said that their home was demolished and there was a big tranche of land around that was taken and they were kind of pushed off. The fence went up and it was like an olive farm, or it might have been dates actually, but there was agricultural produce. That was taken over by a big commercial settlement, some kind of agricultural produce company. And then the man and his family then would get up in the morning in the heat and walk through all these checkpoints and then work that land for the company for not particularly good wages, and then walk back home in the evening. And it was just, for him, it was just the indignity of having his own farm taken off him and then working it for someone else for like a low wage. So in his view, he just thought the whole idea of, do I want that commercial farm to leave and lose my job, preposterous? Because it's like, no, what I want is the land back so we can have our own companies, our own economy, and our own country. That's the kind of basis of it.
And do you think you'll be again before we vote in the door?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you think you'll be able to persuade Fine Gael TDs to come on board?
I don't know. I think...
I understand that Alan Shatter spoke on the Tonight Show the other day against the bill, opposing the bill.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised to see him harshly critical. He's had a very well-known position on that whole issue for a very, very long time. I don't think he's someone you're ever going to convince. That's fine. I think that there were a big number of Fine Gael senators who spoke. Like a lot of them did the same thing. They came in and spoke. They had an 8-minute speech, and they would have spoke for 6 or 7 minutes. Really, really complimentary about the bill, the importance of humanitarian law, the absolutely no disagreement whatsoever that it was an illegal situation. And then the kind of the turn came at the last minute, and it was more so, but we're not sure if this is the right thing to do now. And I mean, that's the way parties work. They support each other. I think there would have been a lot of them yesterday who, if would have been more supportive of the bill. And I always think, give people the benefit of the doubt. I think like the Taoiseach came in himself with a very particular view, And I genuinely think he also would have been there for an hour and a half listening to the likes of Ivana Bacik and Alice Mary Higgins and Lynn Ruan and representatives from every single party, kind of hearing him out, showing him respect, saying, we hear you, but we disagree. And I think that anyone can listen to arguments and change their mind. So maybe if the bill progresses, that they might see it differently. But I don't know.
I don't want to take your night, and also I want the panel if they want to come in and.
No, listen, I love it. We've spent a year in a tiny office on our own, kind of poring over fucking Irish Examiner cables of Department of Foreign Affairs memos. So the chance to actually get to talk about it with someone is great.
That's great. Well, I wanted to ask about Frances Black. That's an incredible journey she has taken.
Yeah, Frances is a legend.
And she's been brilliant with the alcoholic community as well.
Yeah, she is one of the nicest, most decent people I have ever met. And I know I'm biased, that's fair enough. So all disclaimers there, but she is just really, really, really kind-hearted.
I would have said that Frances would have been part of an age group and a generation that probably would have gone to Israel to work in compulsions. You know, it's very strange this sort of what's happened to the, I suppose, the left and Israel, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, really, like, I think just from knowing her and talking to her, that she obviously comes from a big musical background, and that whole kind of folk music kind of scene has already been, you know, the whole Christy Moore stuff. It's all very like power to the people, stick up for the little guy stuff. I think that probably fits in here. I think
artists
passion on this bill was motivated by, like, there was a briefing in the Oireachtas over a year ago, and Trócaire actually I think did it, and they showed like Trócaire I think are really respected. They're not seen as a very radical organization, and they came in, they showed this footage of house demolitions and what was kind of happening, and I think she was very like at a very human level moved and upset by it. And then it was like, okay, well, it's one thing being upset and kind of pissed off about it, what can we do tangibly? And then you kind of get into the boring nitty-gritty of the work. But yeah, she is a really lovely person, very, very kind-hearted, and I think very brave. Like it's cool for me to be able to talk to you guys about the boring stuff, but she stood up there in front of the whole world and is probably getting dog's abuse. I don't know what her Twitter is like, but I'm sure she's getting called every name under the sun. But she kind of brave.
Conor, I've noticed something, and I don't know if the rest of the panel would agree, and whether you'd have more of an opinion on this. A few years ago, Israel, the pushback. If you did a story on Israel, the pushback was so intense. The trolling was just eye-watering. It was just like crazy for every hour that piece would be up. But I've noticed it stopped. That's really,
yeah, I mean, like I kind of
trolls have stopped.
I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to it. And I do think, just talking to Frances anecdotally, it hasn't been as bad as you would have expected. But I also think that, again, it's a measure of the proposal, because it's not like you could say, you know, full BDS, boycott the state of Israel, and maybe that would get a bigger pushback. But there was a letter sent to the Irish Times by 25 really, really prominent Israelis, and you know, many of them Israeli Jews, and they would have been former members of the Israeli Parliament, the former Attorney General of Israel, former Israeli ambassadors to European countries, to South Africa, really, really high-profile people that would be household names in Israel, who all co-signed this letter saying we actually support the bill. And they kind of said, look, we are proud Israelis, we love our country, we want to live in peace with our neighbor, but we don't agree with this occupation, we don't agree with demolishing people's homes, we don't agree with taking all of these natural resources, which we really shouldn't be taking. And I think the fact that you saw those sort of people, who I think are very brave, coming out and saying that, shows that there wasn't the same extreme anger, because I think it's a relatively modest proposal.
Anybody, Luke, Neil, Olga, or Vanessa, do you want to come in?
I was just going to ask Conor, sorry, have you heard from any other countries or politicians across Europe who are interested in taking your bill and using it as a blueprint? Or
I mean, like that's one of the top bullet points on the what do we got to do 9 o'clock Monday morning type stuff. But there has been politicians through some of the kind of European networks of, say, left-leaning parties who were kind of straight on the phone. Some people were kind of coming up in Leinster House. They were surprised to see the bill pass, saying, will you talk to this person? They're really interested. a lot of that kind of work still has to be done. But I think part of it is because a lot of people would have accepted, and many of us would have accepted at face value, the idea that as an EU state we couldn't do this, so you just kind of don't bother. But then that opinion from James Crawford kind of set the wheels in motion, and I think if Ireland was to push forward on this, it would suddenly be seen as an option for a lot of other countries. So whereas previously the focus would have been on, say, recognizing the state of Palestine, Sweden did it in 2014, some of the Eastern European countries have done it. Ireland, of course, has made the commitment to do it, hasn't done it yet. France.
Dublin City Council did.
Pardon?
Dublin City Council recognised.
Yeah, there's been a lot of councils here. Actually, both houses of the Oireachtas, both the Dáil and the Seanad, both unanimously passed motions to recognise the state of Palestine, but only the government can do it, and they haven't, for whatever reason, done it yet. But that's part of the reason why we see this bill as valuable, is that it is novel. Like, it hasn't been done before, and we did have to do a lot of work to make sure it was watertight and that it was feasible and that it could stand up to scrutiny. And I think if it passed a few more hurdles, and if it looked like, hold on, this thing really has legs, we would hope that you would see those other parliaments who might have also been frustrated by a lack of tangible action say, okay, well, this is something modest and small and concrete that we can kind of move forward with. I hope.
Could I just ask, Conor, is there any chance that, like something like this could be taken on like on a European level, or is that a path?
Well, I mean, that would be brilliant. Like, that was said from the beginning when the bill was first debated in January. You had Francis and the Taoiseach had this discussion over it, and like again, in fairness to him, he never gave an iota of sort of moral or political pushback against it at all. It was always just a kind of strategic thing. And his thing, the whole way, he was like, if EU level is where we can be most effective and the EU acting as a bloc is more meaningful, and that's true. But everybody in the chamber kind of said that's just not going to happen. And then he said it himself. He answered a parliamentary question in the Dáil, and he said that there is no reasonable prospect. It's just not going to be adopted. So then the question kind of becomes, what do? Do you kind of leave it?
Can I ask why that is, Conor? In that, like, it seems the basis of what you've done is the legal basis for it, and is that legal basis not the same in European terms?
Yeah,
or what's the difference?
The exact same principle. All European member states are governed by the treaties, and it's the 36th article of the treaties is what gives what we would argue this kind of exemption to trade rules. So the Article 36 gives any EU member state the opportunity to kind of implement a limited proportional restriction on trade if it can be justified based on ABCD, and ABCD here is humanitarian law. So any other EU state could make the exact same argument we have. It's then just up to the politics of that state.
But I suppose what I'm asking, is there a path in the same way as, like, with the European Court of Justice, that you have a sort of a place to bring this where it can be examined and say, okay, look, in EU terms?
So what would happen is that Article 36 is kind of the important thing here, because it's in the treaties for a reason. It gives states the chance to impose these unilateral restrictions on trade if they can justify it. So whether or not it's justified would ultimately, if it went all the way up the line, depend on the Court of Justice of the European Union. So they would have to look at the legal kind of the legal argument we're making. They would look at the legal argument the government is making, and they'd say this is permitted or it's not. So this bill could be like in a legalese, like a test case, if it did go that far. So what could happen now is if it passed a couple more stages, the European Commission could give an advisory opinion and say, we think this is against our rules. But we'd be well within our rights to say, send it to the Court of Justice.
Yeah, I was just thinking in the same way, I know it's an entirely different situation, but that situation of, like, sort of mixed marriages in the States, there was a film recently about it that the Irish actress, whose name I can't remember, was in. But in that same way that just, once the test case sort of gets examined, and then everything sort of falls apart for those that are trying to.
I think, like, you're really kind of veering into like big potentiality stuff, which I wouldn't be able to say anyway conclusively. I think that there's a slight difference here in that the argument we're making is that we have the capacity to do this, not necessarily that we have the like obligation to do it, which are kind of subtle but important differences. There are a few lawyers. There's a really good guy, John Reynolds from Maynooth, Irish guy, wrote a legal opinion saying that we're obliged to do this under international law. So we don't have a choice. International law says this is mandated, whereas the kind of position we've taken is a little bit more modest, and it's saying we have the capacity if we want to. So if this bill was to press forward, this was to be the test case, and we were to win our argument, it would be more so saying that other states could do it if they so wished. But I don't think they wouldn't. Again, my reading would be that they wouldn't necessarily be obliged to do it. Not on the case we presented.
What happens next then?
So what happens next is that the boring kind of arithmetic of it all is that the kind of the slots for legislation in the Oireachtas, they're kind of parceled out. In little slots. You think maybe one a month or something like that, and they're handed out to the different parties, like a rota in work or something like that. So Frances, she's an independent, but she's in a kind of a working technical group with 5 other independents: Lynn Ruan, Alice Mary Higgins, Colette Kelleher, Grace O'Sullivan, and John Dolan, who are all brilliant. I'm huge fans of them all. So the 6 of them get given a certain number of slots to introduce legislation each term. So it would be up to them to decide. They might use one of those slots to bring the bill back. Maybe a supportive party might offer one of their slots. But we essentially, the bill, the kind of long and short of it will be that it has to go through 3 votes in the Seanad and then 3 votes in the Dáil. That's a very simplified view, but the long and short of it is 3 in the Seanad and 3 in the Dáil. So it's the first one in the Seanad. So we would have to bring it back to the Seanad for 2 more rounds of yesterday.
Yeah.
And then the Seanad would have 2 thumbs up, and then it would be passed over to the Dáil. And it's great. We've already had TDs walking up in the corridor saying, "This is amazing. Get it through, finish it, and bring it over to us." So
great.
The Parliament goes into recess for the summer on Tuesday, and it's back in September. So I guess it would kind of be up to Frances to talk to colleagues around the House and say when's the soonest we could bring this back and kind of.
And if there's an election, how could that affect it in terms of?
Yeah, that's kind of complicated. That's kind of get the eyeglass out and go over stacks and stacks of dusty paper. But there's actually Frances kind of led it and initiated the huge amount of work. But there's 7 senators who have actually all signed the bill, so they all tabled it collectively. So it's Frances, the 5 in her group who I mentioned, and David Norris, who we talked about earlier. So all 7 of them are signatories to the bill. So if any of those 7 were to be re-elected, which I hope would be the case, they could carry it forward themselves. So it should be in relatively safe hands.
Norris is he's father of the House, isn't he?
He is. I think there was a really nice moment last year. He got a standing ovation, as I think he became the longest serving Oireachtas member ever. So at some point 1 month last year, he officially surpassed the previous person, whoever that was, and he's officially
Andy Kenny? Was it Andy Kenny?
Who was it? Might have been Andy Kenny. Maybe it was the longest serving senator, but he's definitely been around a long time, and it would be a brave man that would bet against him sticking around for a while longer. And the other 6 are all doing great stuff as well. So I think one of the 7, at least at a minimum, should be back, and it means that after an election the bill could be carried forward, depending.
That's some pension Norris must have, eh?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure he's
he can throw up voters for the foreseeable future anyway.
Yeah.
So Conor, listen, fantastic. Can I just briefly ask you, what got you into all this? Were you?
I was living and working in an NGO in Brussels, and my girlfriend Kate got a job back in Dublin last January, and I moved home to kind of be with her really. And then a friend of mine works for Grace O'Sullivan in the Parliament, and that this job was going. There was an opening, so he said, "Look, send in your CV." I met the senators and kind of got involved in it, and yeah, really lucky. Feel super lucky to do it. And then the bill itself, like I can't take any credit for that. There was probably a few moments, but that Trócaire video screening, Frances came out of it. And there would have been a lot of discussion over, she would have a chance to introduce a bill on something. And I think came out of that really moved and upset and kind of thought that this is a worthy cause. And then it was like, okay, figure it out. And a big team of people, like a lot of NGOs and different voluntary organizations, and loads of people beyond just me and Frances spent time working on it. So yeah, I just felt really lucky yesterday to have been in the room. It was,
Okay.
it was
You also believe in what you're doing as well, don't you? It's not just a job, right?
Of course, yeah. Like I wouldn't be there if I didn't. Like since I started, we've sponsored two bills. This is one, and the other one I mentioned briefly was on family reunification rights for refugees, and they follow a kind of consistent theme. In university I studied, and the focus was human rights, and the six of them, they're passionate about that too. So I kind of knew that that be the kind of things they'd pursue. So yeah, I feel very lucky. They're lovely people. None of them, I don't think any of them would have called themselves politicians. They're all elected for the first time. They all kind of come from a civil society background. They all have very different kind of plans. One of them, John Dolan, is an amazing guy. He still is the head of the Disability Federation of Ireland for a number of decades. And he'd never been in a political party, never been elected. And he got into the Shannon in 2016. And like he's not single issue, but he does this thing where no matter what it is, if a bill is coming through, John will walk in there and everyone will listen to him, and he'll look at it from a disability perspective, because he knows from years of his work in his own life what it's like to try and get on a dart in a wheelchair, that sort of stuff. And he has had a limited but really meaningful impact in amending so many bills. It's stuff that doesn't make the news, and I'm just kind of plugging him because I think he's great. Bills that come through, it doesn't make the headlines, but small amendments, because from the perspective of someone who normally wouldn't have been in the parliament. And I think Lynn Ruane has been good at that as well. Like she talks a lot about her own background. She's not the conventional politician. Like I'm really lucky. I got to go to got every opportunity in the world, and my background's very different to Lynn's. And she has a perspective on stuff that the vast majority of people in Leinster House don't have. And she's brilliant at that. Again, bills will be going through and she'll stand up and say, think about this from the kind of community I come from. So yeah, they're all great. They do good work, and I'm just kind of lucky to be knocking around the place.
Fantastic, and thank you, Conor. Well, that's what the Shannon is supposed to be, isn't it? Like,
it is. It's good. I mean, it has its ups and its downs. There's days we've kind of sat there and been like, what the hell is going on? I think that's the way it works in any parliament. And sometimes it's really effective. And yesterday was definitely one of those days.
Brilliant. Anybody want to jump in here with anything? Neil, Luke, you okay? Vanessa?
Yeah, just you mentioned about how Dublin City Council has recognised the state of Palestine. That was under the Sinn Féin Lord Mayor, Micheál McDonagh. I think Sinn Féin have been very active to promote, I suppose, to the recognition of Palestine. And I'm going to open to correction, but are we also do they also recognise not to the Hewlett Packard as that they are allies of the Israeli?
I think Dublin City Council, I'm not 100% sure, but I think they have some sort of policy about divesting from Israeli companies or something like that. That would be a little bit of a different field, but yeah, like a lot of the local councils, particularly the ones with a big kind of Sinn Féin membership, would have made statements and various moves over the last years on this particular issue, because it's just, there's a big historical link there. I actually don't know where it comes from or what the reasons for it is. I suppose you'd have to ask someone in the party, but in fairness to them, they've been talking about it. They've been making the speeches for a very, very, very long time. They all turned up yesterday and spoke very, very kind of powerfully in favour of the bill. I'm sure some of them would think differently. Some would want to go much further. Some would be more modest, but I think they all kind of rode in behind it and were kind of, they were great.
I was just curious because I know Dublin City Council voted about, I don't know if it's a boycott or not, but Hewlett Packard was one of the companies anyway named in the vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure wouldn't it be the case that Sinn Féin would think that there's a parallel between Ireland is effectively like an occupied territory in terms of the north, and that's where the sort of the synchronicity comes.
Yeah, I think like my kind of focus on it has always been the letter of the law, and trying to look at the kind of the Geneva Conventions has been the holy Bible for this whole thing, all about humanitarian law. So you get into kind of murky territory when you get into what is occupied and what's not, and every situation is different. But there definitely is a broad parallel whereby I think they would understand the feeling of what it is like to live under an occupation, and that feeling of not being able to use your own resources, and they definitely feel a big sympathy there, for sure. And I think it goes back a really long time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Conor. Would you like to stick around? We're going to do the papers, and we've got a bit more chat.
I'm going to go get in my lab.
Can I explain the knocking earlier?
Okay, yeah. What happened? I was sure I was going to open the door and there'd be some lad there with a camera, and this would be sort of like I would be a meme tomorrow. You know, everyone would be watching the video like, guy doesn't understand the joke. But
sorry to. I hate to freak out a millennial. The doorbell thing that I had, the YouTube.
Oh no, John.
Well, I let that play, and I was obviously the next YouTube playlist, which was door knocking, the surreptitiously knocking, scarily knocking. So forgive me, Claire. Thank you so much.
Well, the chap thought it was the Joker.
Yeah. Well, it was in a way, I guess.
So was John Ryan.
Yeah. Thanks so much. You go and do what you got to do.
Nice to talk to you guys, and thanks a lot for
thank you.
Cheers, Conor.
We'll be emailing you whenever we do get it back, hopefully sooner rather than later. And yeah, please keep getting the message out there.
Thanks. That's good, Conor. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye now. This is probably the future of the Taoiseach. Conor O'Neill. He'll be our boss in about 20 years' time. Very impressive. Olga, Conor's a friend of yours.
Yeah, so I went back to college a few years ago, and Conor was in my class, and that's exactly what I thought. Yeah, he'll be, like many of the other kids in my class.
It'll be a celebrity death match between him and Paddy Cosgrave. My money's on him, actually.
Say that again.
It'll be a celebrity death match between him and Paddy Cosgrave, the web guy.
Here, Conor would.
Do what?
For control of Ireland, for power. Come on, listen.
I know, Conor.
You would want it.
Anyway,
that guy is too decent and too clever to be bothered.
That's tough. Sorry, Albert.
But yeah. So like I said, he was in a college course, and he was one of many. Like I was one of the mature students, along with somebody else. There's just two of us, and the rest were very young. But they were all so sound, and you could tell they were all going to do great things. And Conor was definitely one of them. So
yeah, I mean, they talk about millennials and stuff, but like, look at that guy.
I know. Yeah.
Don't worry, he has plenty of time to get old and bitter like the rest of us.
Yeah, but he's. Like it's the perfect combination, I guess. To be paid and also to be doing something that you cannot believe in as well.
Yeah, the dream.
You're gonna crack that one day.
He'll get a ministerial advisor job. And he'll end up in, one of them. Yeah,
he'll be probably Harry in a couple of years' time. Is there any thoughts on the British Royal couple's visit this week? Anybody?
Well, John, I have to say, you know your fashion designers.
I know my Givenchy from my.
Do you know your forest green from your emerald green?
I still contend it's forest green. It's certainly not emerald green.
Okay.
Jesus Christ! What's forest green?
Forest green was.
Is that the Fianna Fáil green?
Yes, actually, it's the color of. Meghan Markle's Givenchy jersey dress.
See, I just said that was racing green.
British racing green. No.
British
racing green for Neil. What Neil's got in there is Chiron.
Yeah, that's.
Neil, were you impressed with the Royal couple's visit?
That wasn't great. But poor old Catherine Noon, didn't she have to apologise for her tweet, her bold tweet?
But it was true. She said that Meghan was following the story and that she had supported the repeal campaign.
I don't know if she stretched to say supported, but was following it with interest and was pleased or something to that effect. But the royals aren't allowed to get involved in politics.
Yeah, but I think historically Meghan was involved in Planned Parenthood activism, wasn't she?
But she did say, John, I think maybe you're getting mixed up. She did say she was following Vicky Phelan's story.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, Vicky Phelan's.
Yeah, no.
That's what she says to everybody. Like, oh, I'm into couches. I've been following you. And your couch thing.
She was following the knocking story on the show tonight.
Yeah, I heard about you and the knocking. Yeah, I've been following that story. So maybe.
Maybe she follows
great?
the Neil and the movie reviews.
Your story.
She does. Broadsheet's where she goes for all the movie releases. I took a stroll by the British ambassador's ranch, and you kind of have to have a laugh.
Because that's by you, isn't it?
Yeah. You have to have a laugh. So you mean you wouldn't know it was the royal family coming? It looked like a guarded checkpoint. And there wasn't many. And one of the things I like about Ireland is, generally speaking, people don't give a shit. There was about 3 people behind this one railing, like something from Father Ted, and they had this face on them as if to say, "Ah, well, we stick around. Ah, no, come on, Coronation Street's on." It was kind of that feel to it. But there was about 10 cops, and they looked about as they were all dressed in their gear. So it was very casual and easy going. I was going to see if I could blag my way in, but I just felt like I'd be let down if I did. It didn't look like there was a massive rave going on or anything.
Yeah, but you know what? We didn't hear anything from them for years and years and years. And now it's every second week one of them is visiting. His dad was only here a fortnight ago.
Yeah.
But all the cool girls are kind of no longer cool. Like Una Mullally seemed kind of starstruck. And Amy Huberman.
Come on. Is that who we're calling cool?
There's a picture of Amy Huberman with Prince Harry. She's absolutely.
Wasn't she at his brother's wedding?
But
you have to think, though, isn't it the worst fucking honeymoon you could ever go on? You've married someone who's well out of your league, and then you go meet Leo, and then you're going to a garden party where you have to be in bed by 10, and you're sleeping in the President of Ireland's house. There's no way they'd be getting any action on their honeymoon while they're staying here. That's a far throw from when she was doing drink promotions in Dicey's, and he was off flying planes in the RAF or whatever he was doing. I'd say it must be terrible. I genuinely think they would see little me walking by the ambassador's gaff in me shiny tracksuit, and they're jealous. And I'm eating a bag of chips from the local chipper, and I'd say they'd be like, "I'd love a bag of chips."
But didn't they say to Leo, "This is business" or something? This is business, really. Yeah, wasn't that the quote?
I thought Michael D. Higgins and Sabina were lovely. With they're just so good. They just seem. I know he's going for election or whatever. Fantastic with visiting people, though. And we see the photographs. There's a brilliant photograph where it looks like they're both Harry and Meghan are kind of like cooing at Michael D, like he's like a little, but it's in fact Michael D's dog. But it's so it hit me on a balcony, and it looks like they're cooing over our president. Anyway.
It was very endearing, yeah. Yeah,
they're very endearing. Sabina Higgins, I think, is just. She's a fantastic kind of warmth there.
It's genuine.
Not evident, I have to say, in Leo. Leo seems like almost like Prince Charles. He seems certainly with the
Did he curtsy? Maybe he got his curtsy wrong, John.
No, he seems stiffer than them, and he seemed more royal than them. Or more kind of regal in his bearing, or more.
Maybe he thinks he's the king or the queen.
Neil, we have the tomorrow's papers that are up.
Yeah. You'll have to throw over the control room access.
John,
Brian.
You were talking about Amy Huberman. Well, she was at William's wedding. Do you remember? So maybe she knows that she had to dance with Harry.
Okay, so this is that's the Times. Did you want to?
Yeah, so there's the Times. Ryanair pilots called two more strikes after 30 flights grounded. So there was a strike today. So I think was it a quarter of the pilots went on strike, Irish Ryanair pilots. So Ryanair passengers are facing further disruption to their travel plans this month after the airline's directly employed Irish pilots announced 2 more 24-hour strikes. So yeah, almost 100 of the airline's pilots went on strike today in a dispute about seniority. 30 of the company's 292 flights due to fly in and out of Dublin were cancelled. So they have called for 2 more strikes, and they're going to be on Friday, July 20th, and Tuesday, July 24th. So there you go.
Is that the way the paper looks?
Sorry, I can't see what you're.
No, well, we're just seeing it. Just seems very grey.
It's just a screen share. That's the Google.
Okay.
I'm not sure though. No, I think that's.
It looks fine on the side. Looks fine on the side.
Does it? Yeah. Okay.
So are we agreed that's yellow?
Yeah.
Yes.
What kind of yellow?
Airy.
Yeah.
What Trump's hair?
No, Mrs. the First Lady, Melania, isn't it? That's gorgeous. Now I'd wear that if it wasn't green.
And
I'd wear yellow now. I'd look like Barbara Cartland now if I wore that in yellow.
get ready for daytime bans on water use, as Minister. Coveney Brexit plan unlikely to set up the EU. Examiner there as well, Neil.
Yep.
So the story, the splash in the Examiner is hundreds of cases may follow in the wake of adoption lawsuit. So this is a story by Conal Farta and Anne O'Loughlin. So this is the story about Tressa Reeves. So she sued the Guild, or was it, sorry, I can't remember what they call the name, the Adoption Society, St. Patrick's Guild, sorry, and it was run by the Sisters of Charity. So she and her son, so Tressa Reeves, she had a baby in 1961, and she didn't find him for another 50 or so years, so she was searching for him, and so she sued the St. Patrick's Guild and the state, and they finalised yesterday, and we don't know the details of the settlement, it's confidential, but she gave a statement on the steps of the High Court today, saying that she was hoping for that her action and the result of her action would encourage others to come forward. But this is the story, so by Conal Farta and Anne O'Loughlin. So thousands of people may come forward to sue the state and religious orders over forced and illegal adoptions following the settlement of a High Court high-profile case, beg your pardon, in the High Court. Tressa Reeves and her son Patrick Farrell settled their action over his illegal adoption. So yeah, it was 57 years ago. So she in a statement given on the steps of the four courts, she said, "I sincerely hope the outcome of this will have encouraged other people in similar situations to me to act as I did. Hopefully the authorities will support and assist them." So she was in Dublin. She had the baby she had her son in 1961, and she named him Andre because she thought that would help her find him by giving him that name. Eventually, but anyway, he was placed with a family in Carlow and given a different name, Patrick Farrell, by his parents. But he didn't find out that he was adopted until he was 52, I believe. So so that's that case.
Yeah. There's one photograph of Tressa on the Sun on the site today, actually.
Yes, yeah, of her and her son, yeah. So the picture there on the top, that's a picture of Amnesty International poster across a bridge in London, I believe. Vauxhall Bridge in London, yeah, because Trump is in London. And then the story on the right there, 2 more days of pilot strikes, that's about Ryanair. Man who infected ex-partners with HIV could get life. So a man convicted of causing serious harm to 2 former partners by infecting them with the HIV faces up to life in prison. He's a 28-year-old man. What? Okay. Then just as far and below that, 57 women take legal cases over cervical cancer tests. So at least 57 women are now taking legal action over the cervical cancer test scandal after 17 previously unknown cases against hospitals, individual doctors and laboratories were revealed by officials. State Claims Agency Director Kieran Breen confirmed the situation in the High Court today. As the High Court, awarded one woman $2 million over a related ovarian cancer case. So, speaking as Health Minister Simon Harris separately admitted plans to speak with 3,000 cervical cancer test victims could delay state investigations by 4 or 5 months. Mr. Breen said he's aware of multiple extra cases before the court. So obviously that figure is just going up and up and up, and probably will go up and up and up.
Well, actually, I think that's it, isn't it? Do you want to flip to the English papers? It's actually a pretty good opportunity, Vanessa, to address the Bernie thing, if you want to. I'm not sure if you want to. I can't hear you, Vanessa.
Sorry, everybody. I've turned off my mic. I don't have an issue. Of course, John, I didn't have an issue the last time you brought it up. I wasn't expecting to talk about it.
I know, yeah.
But I didn't object. I didn't mind at all. So I don't know why people would read in that you were inappropriate or anything like that, because it's my story. So it's up to me to feel like that, nobody else. What
you told me a minute before we went on air, so I assumed it was part of the scene. Anyway.
No, there's no need to assume anything. I don't mind. I don't mind at all. So.
Bernie was upset with you about, or it was upset with me initially, and then.
Yeah, well, I think it's important just to get this out there. Everybody I suppose it's my story, and I don't care how you think about it. It's what matters is what I think about it. And
can you explain what the story is? You were one of the women who got the letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, wasn't it?
Oh, geez, no, it's more. It's way more.
Okay.
Anyway, we won't go back that way. We won't.
You got it that day. You got it that day. You told me this before we went in.
No, I didn't. I got it just prior to that, just days before, and I remember you said, "Oh, we're going to talk about the cervical screen." The Vicky Phelan story had just broke. Yeah. And you'd asked me, and I says, "Well, actually, John, I'm one of the women in the group," and then we spoke about it, and I remember not thinking too big a deal out of it because.
But did Bernie think we said this because to get viewers or clickbait?
Well, somebody said it, and I think it was deleted out. But the suggestion that we did it for that is totally wrong, folks. And I think it was a very nasty thing to suggest on the night we introduced Kenny Tynan to everybody. We made it about me, and it wasn't about me at all. And I know we followed up a few weeks later talking about screening and how I was screened and how my journey started 20 years ago, and how I was fine, and it's all going to be fine.
Okay. So
but to be called a narcissist, quite frankly.
Yeah, but no, but
I don't know where they got that from.
Vanessa, Bernie didn't call you a narcissist.
No, but another commenter did.
Well, we're not talking about that. On this particular issue, the Bernie situation, is that being resolved then? I mean, are you guys okay?
I don't know. I haven't gone back to the thread, and I haven't taken it any further. I just wanted people to know that I've no problem with the story, the way it was handled. I've no problem with the follow-ups at all. So don't feel indignant on my behalf, or take it out on John, or suggest there's anything else between John and I at all. In fact, if there's anyone going to murder John Ryan, it'll be me. And then, so there's that side of things, and then to suggest that we kind of did it to get viewers, I think was wrong, and I think it was very unfair.
Right. But they don't think that. I mean, Bernie maybe they were just upset. And look. And
then to think then that I was telling lies, I didn't like that at all. So.
Okay. Well.
Anyway, everybody, I'll be keeping it to myself now. So.
Okay. Well, are you happy? Are you cool with that now?
I'm cool with it anyway.
Okay. No, but I asked you before the show. Did you
no, I don't mind at all. I don't mind. No problem.
Because I'm not ambushing you, Vanessa. I asked you before the show. You said yes.
Yeah.
Witnesses now. Come on, I'm not. I thought you wanted to resolve it.
Well, I just wanted to make it clear that we didn't concoct the story, or we didn't deliberately tell people.
Yeah.
Just for outrage or to make it a sensation. That wasn't. It was totally unplanned. Totally. And I'm glad we did it the way we did it.
That's crazy. Okay, I didn't plan the knocking thing. Okay.
Oh yeah, but I would tell everybody to go back to that particular show just to hear John say vaginal gel.
Nobody could be bothered with that.
So it's not okay to bring a towel to the cinema, but it's okay for John Ryan to talk about vaginal gel on Broadsheet on the
Well,
telly.
he's an apparent expert on.
Well, it was part of an important story, wasn't it?
It was. I don't know why they would take that view with it, but anyway.
But thanks anyway, Vanessa. So, sorry, Luke, you were going to come in there.
Yeah, no, well, just the one thing that I sort of I meant to say this week was I always keep an eye on the tribunal stuff. I mean, well done again to Olga for everything there. I mean, it's sort of it's you know, I mean, I know we talk about it, and I know, but it's you know, I almost have a problem with this. I can't but read it, and it's great to feel that way about, you know, a story that you've been brought along to the extent that, you know, when the information is given. But I was just thinking that a couple of weeks ago I watched the you know the Irish film Intermission, you know, and it just there's a nice parallel between Paul Reynolds and Martin Cullinane, the two characters in Intermission. You know, like this Gombean pastiche of backward Ireland, you know, was actually a reality, you know, that we didn't know existed, but now it all seems to be coming in. I mean, I can't, like, the mind sort of boggles, you know, like when Paul Reynolds is talking, and like it seems that he's so self-deluded as to, you know, like what he's saying is so very clearly, you know, sort of, you know, he's working for Martin, you know, like he's working the position. You know, like I mean, it could be, you know, he's his friend or whatever it is, whatever. But he's so quite obviously biased, but very, very, you know, sort of, it's so invisible to him that it's almost comedic.
Well, I would say that the crime correspondent would argue that, like, I have to be biased. You know, are you gonna get a quote from Fat Freddie Thompson? You know, I mean, it's, you know.
Well, not really. I mean, if there's a news story and they're saying, okay, look, this is what we're examining. This is what was said. I mean, you don't necessarily have to take the side of, like, the Gardaí on that story. I mean, the Gardaí are one half of the story. You know, I mean, I don't know. Like in these cases, I always think like there should be some sort of international agency where they show these things to people in Australia or something who have no knowledge of the case, and they show them like, okay, this is what this guy said, and this is what was reported, because it's so obviously biased in one direction.
Yeah, red team. It's called a red team.
I mean, yeah, it's like, but you know, that's just your opinion, I guess. Well, what Paul Reynolds was come back with, but also, can I just sort of step back and try and get into the minds of these guys? Like when they write, this guy Conor Lally from the Irish Times, he wrote about Templemore, and it was kind of quite a bit of a colour piece about Noreen and people, young guards, and it was really, you know, it was really sort of interesting. It was like these were the greatest. The race, after a race of thousands, they had arrived at Templemore to take on the greatest challenge.
It's like the Navy SEALs.
No, but I don't want to laugh at them, because it's a bit like kind of you know, just laughing during the referendum, you know, laughing at Catholicism. You know, I mean, they really, really believe it. Paul Reynolds genuinely believes that these are the good guys and there's the bad guys, and that's it, really. You know, it's right. You know,
no, but you know, and the funny thing is that, I mean, I know a lot of guards, and you know, particularly through like GAA and stuff like that, and like, you know, a lot of good people I call friends, but it's just in this sort of there's this like peculiar area where the media and the guards meet, and there's so much value for someone in media to have that, you know, sort of, you know, close relationship. I mean, it's basically, you know, you're on the gravy train if you're getting, you know, that bit of information coming across the wall. And You know, it's so clear that should be a problem.
Well, yeah, it is a problem. But what you forget, Luke, and what I think we forget is we had, the Troubles really regressed the journalism in Ireland. It distorted the journalism in Ireland. It made it like the Guards were. Bias was expected. You had to be. I mean, if you're not pro-Guard, who are you? Pro-Provo, or So over those years, this completely distorted the relationship. So whereby, and the fact that the Guards look after intelligence, like they're MI5 plus the police. So it's an extremely, they had so much responsibility during the Troubles, and then in the post-Troubles era, I think.
And you can sort of see all that, and that's kind of part of the point I'm making, that like none of the people sort of who are saying these things know that they sound like way off when they're saying them. That they're very clearly, if you were to like analytically analyze sort of the things they said, whether there was bias there, it's so blindly obvious, and they so very clearly can't see it.
I think we talked about this, I think, a few times. I think it's clear from the tribunal, from questions and answers back and forth with certain journalists, and then looking at their work and looking at what they said at the tribunal, that they were told things and they did accept them. And the question is, should they have been told them? And was being told this thing a negative briefing? But they kept saying, no, I was never negatively briefed. But if you look at what they were being told at a particular time, when it should never have been told, then many people would argue you were negatively briefed, but you just don't want to admit it, possibly, because you're seen then as possibly being either naive or duped or not, so they just refuse to say, yeah, I was. Yeah. But
there's a sort of party line.
Sorry, Vanessa just wanted to get in there.
Sorry. Just on it was just particularly, and kind of following up on Luke's thoughts about the bias in RTE. In one way, we always accept and took it with a grain of salt, but to see it in black and white there the other day, John, on the thread, it was quite startling for me, particularly the guy that just retired, the news director.
Yeah.
For him to kind of put an email, we don't want to be seen to be putting the boot in, which means they actually recognise that they had a bias.
Or I think he said in his evidence that, they recognise that there's at least an accusation of bias. So, in order to offset that.
They were aware of it. They were aware of it.
They are aware of it.
In case we are accused of more bias, I think was it also in the email. That is very dangerous for that to be accepted within that news department.
Yeah, I got to do a bit of an RTE thing here. Like, they all deny, you realise that, everybody, Luke as well, they all strenuously deny that.
But you see, John, also in the Garda press officer, was it McAlinden?
No, he's the Andrew McAlinden is the communications director. Yeah,
the communications director. He was emailing Martin Callanan about doing an interview with Sean O'Rourke, and he was having. I read into those emails. If I'm wrong, that's fine. I'll take it back. But he was saying that they would get a pre-record with Sean O'Rourke and to guide the questions, have a favourable interview, and you just do it this way.
Yeah.
They were able. That's proof that they were able to influence Sean O'Rourke, and Sean O'Rourke is like.
Well, that's just. Okay.
Well, just to be careful. Just be careful.
That's one side of the story, by the way.
Yeah, so that's just one side of the story. So that email was sent by Andrew McAlinden to Martin Callanan, and it was sent after the furore over him making the disgusting remark in January 2014. And yes, the purpose of the email was to move off that topic, and to positive news was in the subject agenda, the subject line in the email. The purpose of the email, and he said it, was to move off this. And you're right, it was, but we didn't hear if he had A, spoken to RTE, or B, what RTE would have possibly said. All we know is that Martin Callanan said no to doing that proposal because he was holding firm on the disgusting remark. That's what that was, which makes Paul Reynolds' evidence interesting when he says that he met him in the urinal toilets of Leinster House just after he made it and said he regretted it. So.
And because it flashed up on screen during the tribunal, I won't say the name, but you would not believe one of the suggestions Michael Linden had made to Callanan what they should discuss on the Today with Sean O'Rourke to distract from Callanan's troubles. Yeah. The name he suggested, amazing.
You could tell us off air, Joe.
Very cynical.
Very cynical. I mean, you were physically unwell after reading that.
Yeah, it was very cynical. It was really, really, really very, very disappointing.
But because
I don't want to sound like a given out mother, but
yeah, I mean, anyway.
The other startling thing this week, and it's actually been the work this week actually has been brilliant on this, because there was a fatigue setting in, and there was so much information, but there was one other element to the content on the tribunal on Broadsheet this week, and it was a nice reminder of just it was Paul Reynolds was insisting on protecting the source, and Judge Charlton said, but it was the Garda Press Office, so it was fact, so it's not a source. There was.
Oh, that was based on. If you want me to explain, that was based on. You see, Superintendent Taylor claimed in his protected disclosure, and I think the reason for him telling this was to kind of show that there was a relationship between Paul Reynolds and Martin Callanan in so much as they were in contact, is that Superintendent Taylor said that the morning Martin Callanan resigned, that Taylor called him, that Callanan called Taylor and said to him, "I'm resigning, get it out quick before the fuckers do me," I think was the quote. Get it to Paul, and he meant Paul Reynolds. Mm-hmm. So Paul Reynolds did report at 10 o'clock that morning that Callanan was resigning, and he did break the story. But the thing, I think what Charlton was getting at was, he was asked, did Taylor tell you this? And then he said, I'm not telling you. And then Charlton was like, come on, it was the Garda Press Office. It happened. You did report on it, and he did concede. That he reported on it.
He literally blew away this kind of the protecting the source. I have to protect my source, and it's the Garda Press Office is the source. So
sorry, Luke.
No, just like that business of the protecting of sources. I mean, it really, like, I don't know, from a sort of someone who doesn't have a lot of knowledge about the journalism and the media, I like, it really sort of takes them down like a sort of a good notch in my estimation. Sort of how they're sort of behaving, not in terms of what has happened, but this thing of journalistic privilege being used as a sort of a shield when it's unnecessary and sort of actually unhelpful to what would seem to be a way to reveal what journalists usually reveal.
Yeah, well, it's ironic because Colin Keane, the piece today, the Morrison Cave in the Irish Times Part 2, it's about ostensibly sorry, this
the video still on. He wrote a piece 2 weeks ago, yeah.
No, but also but a long time ago, like 2006, he was protected his source to the point of
threat of jail, right?
Threat of jail and everything, and now that one of his colleagues are using privilege in the way that they are, it's kind of brings privilege into disrepute a little bit, isn't it? And he should be sort of very acutely aware of that. But
well, I suppose, John, I just to recognise as well that they're protecting sources. I think maybe they're giving out a message that they're probably working on different stories, and have sources, and they want to give the assurance that the source is safe in their hands. Maybe that's the message they're trying to make public, rather than protecting Dave Taylor as a source and making a big deal about that. Maybe they are dealing with some mad, crazy stories and very high profile,
but
dangerous stories, and they need to give the message. They need to give out the signal that a source is safe with them.
Yes, Vanessa, but the fact is that their source, if it is Dave Taylor, has been damaged by their silence. Luke, I was wondering if you had any etchings, any kind.
No, nothing this week. I'm hoping to increase my output when I hit August. I'm actually thinking of maybe sort of doing some Porto-based sort of film stuff. So maybe if I do some sort of reportage on Porto, that might find a way to the site or something like that. But that's
Definitely.
Vox Pop crew are available.
Well, I was very impressed. I saw that. I hope you guys had fun doing it too. It looks like a good afternoons.
Actually, Neil and Vanessa, that was fantastic, Vox Pop. I mean, we needed more, but more never came.
Well, I was disappointed Neil cut out the GA lads, the intercounty men.
You forgot to press record, Vanessa, on the box. You have no one to blame but yourself.
We'll have to get an intern.
Okay. Well, thank you. Hopefully we'll have Derek on next week. He was a no-show tonight, sadly. He contacted me beforehand and gave me good hours notice, which is always good. Big thank you to Luke Brennan in Porto. Thank you so much tonight. Neil Curran, our producer. Any improv this week? Neil, you want to promote?
Nope.
Okay.
Nothing this week.
Olga Cronin from Broadsheet, thank you so much. Vanessa Foran, celebrity accountant. Would you like to explain who the gentleman is behind you?
Hi, yeah, thanks, John. This is the coach of the football team that were in the caves in Thailand. His pet name is, I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, so Pai Ek, Brother Ek, is what he's known as. His full name is Eka Paul Chantawong, and he's 25 years old. He is the coach of the soccer team that were trapped in the caves in Thailand. You all know the story. But I remember when it kind of became more into the mainstream, when they were found and they were discovered to be all safe. And I remember my reaction at the time was, God, how did the coach keep the team of 13-year-olds together? Underground with no food, no drink. They're scared, they're in the dark, they're cold, they're probably getting sick. And he kept them all together and he kept them alive. And I thought that was a remarkable sort of achievement. You know, anyone that's done leadership training or, team building and stuff, he fascinated me. Anyway, so it turns out that he is an ordained Buddhist monk and he did meditation with them in the cave. And he is also a stateless. He could be deported from Thailand at any time. This was new to me as well when I looked into this, looked a bit deeper in, and he's from an area in north. In fact, three of the kids on the team are in the same position, but they have more rights. He's from an area in northern Thailand that borders with Myanmar, and the expression the Guardian used was it's a pretty lawless area, and so he has actually no state rights in Thailand. So I think the news briefs are saying that they're considering giving him full asylum now.
Oh, yeah.
In Thailand, but I just felt that he's only 25 years old, and to have kept those team, and I mean they're teenage boys, so if anyone knows anything about young teenagers, it is a chore dealing with one, and need to deal with a team underground in the dark, scared, hungry. I think it was a remarkable story. So I just wanted to make sure people saw his face.
Great.
And knew his name.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. And final predictions for the World Cup. Who's going to win? Croatia. Olga.
I don't even know the final.
Croatia and France.
Neil?
France.
Neil?
I think France will do it.
Okay.
What about you, John? What did you go for?
Oh, I'm so disappointed over Japan's defeat a few matches ago. I'm literally inconsolable.
It's been a great World Cup, though.
You've enjoyed it?
Well, I think the reffing has been very good. I think the stadiums have been in great condition. There's been no real let's just say hooliganism, that, you know, sort of desperate stories
Yeah, okay.
coming out, and the diving, oh well, Neymar, you know, but
Okay.
there's been no dodgy decisions that kind of affected the games, the results.
Okay. We're still on air, so I'm just going to end. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, and thanks. And see you tomorrow. And thank you very much for joining us. Inside are here next week. Thank you so much. Silence.